Our Central Bargaining Committee is at the table. We remain at the table. We are laser focused on getting a deal. We have made significant moves in all areas in hopes of reaching a deal while ensuring that workers have good wages and that students and families have better services. And yet, it has been the consistent theme ever since we first asked to negotiate the very first day possible on June 3rd, more than 150 days ago, that the Conservative government is dragging their feet. What's changed now is that instead of delaying and stalling, the government is outright refusing to participate. You're left wondering if they ever wanted a deal at all. This government would recognize the importance of bargaining and appreciate that my 55,000 frontline education coworkers need a fair agreement. Their behavior has shown they do not. My coworkers and I still want to reach a negotiated agreement that will guarantee the types of services that students need to succeed, help school boards solve their very real problems of hiring and keeping qualified employees, and provide education workers with the long overdue wage increases that they desperately need. In response, this government is stalled. They've said no to every proposal. They've offered only cuts. And this week they introduced legislation that would impose a collective agreement and drive more of my coworkers, the lowest paid education workers in the province, further into poverty. With his actions and his words, the Minister of Education has indicated throughout this process that he doesn't understand how negotiations work. Well, allow me to play my role as an educational assistant and ensure that every student understands the material. The right to strike is a fundamental right. It was upheld by the Supreme Court. It's an indispensable part of collective bargaining, and there is no effective bargaining process without it. Workers organizing each other and mobilizing through a potential strike is the only way that workers can get even close to leveling the playing field. That's true in the private sector. It's especially true in the public sector, when the employer is the government that has shown their true authoritarian colors and has a history of trampling workers' rights. The Ford government's actions have moved this beyond a question of better jobs and better services. They have attacked all workers. Stephen Lecce is saying to my coworkers, give up your rights before I strip them. We are not willing to let him do that, and we will defend and exercise our rights. Serving strike notice was completely legal. Our Central Bargaining Committee, made up of frontline education workers from across the province, has followed every single legal process as required from the beginning. We've done nothing out of the ordinary. And unlike the Ford government, we remain at the table, ready to bargain. The strike date is not interfering with bargaining. Two things are interfering. The first is a piece of regressive legislation currently on the floor of Queen's Park that strips away the rights of workers. The second is the minister's complete refusal to negotiate. This government owes it to students, to families, to workers, and to all Ontarians to change their course. I will now open for questions. Chris.
Hi there, thanks. Can you hear me?
I can.
So let's just be clear for parents so that they have certainty. So you will be going ahead with the Friday strike protest as planned?
Unless a deal is reached. Respectfully, Chris, that's why there's the 5-day notice. Nothing has changed. We served 5 days of notice on Sunday. We have always said moving forward, and it would have been the same, if we did not have legislation. If you remember, Chris, and I do remember you and I well, back in 2019, people waiting by their phones, waiting, at the final hours when a deal came through at the cusp of when the strike would have happened. This is not uncommon. And so, yes, we have, provided the 5-day notice. Parents should be making arrangements, and we will be proceeding. But that doesn't mean we're not going to try and get a deal before that happens. Right now, we work with a mediator. And what's really causing problems is that we are thinking that we are working through the mediator and that the parties are actively bargaining. And then we hear from the minister that they're not. As we know, the minister provides direction to his staff at the the Ministry of Education, it is sending a lot of mixed messages. And so, we are under the understanding that we're waiting for a response. But now we're hearing from the minister that if we don't remove our notice of strike, there will be no response. We need some clear answers from the government.
So sorry, I'm unclear. Does that mean that all negotiating teams are at the table or they're not?
So at this point, we actually aren't all at one table. It would be nice to be in that situation, but we're not. So our team is here. I understand that the CTA team, the Council of Trustees Associations, is here. And my understanding is that ministry staff is here. But then we have the minister coming out today saying that bargaining would not be continuing until our notice of strike was removed.
I understand that you can't really tell us exactly what's going to happen over the next couple of days, but you're basically saying that if the government, which has already presented its final offer, doesn't increase its final offer, then you're going on strike.
That's correct.
They've offered between 1.25 to 2.5%. What specifically are you looking for?
Well, for instance, their wage proposal is actually less than it was before because they've put in more pieces that would actually prevent workers from getting the 2.5. Upon reflection on it, and we spent a lot of time on it yesterday, the vast majority of our workers would only receive 1.5%, which is actually less than the 2% that they offered back in August. There's also a concern about the service security that we really need to see that happening. We do not have that in position right now. There is a concern moving forward in regards to the investments for staffing. We have a lot of concerns that are just simply not addressed by this legislated offer. And let's be clear, it's a legislated offer. It's either take this or we legislate it that was put on the table.